child having a diabetic emergency. Diabetic emergency. How do we know a child's having a diabetic emergency? What do we look for? So we're going to look for somebody who is shaking, weak, almost like they're about to drop. You know how you sometimes don't eat for a long time? You fast? The feeling of that weak feeling? Yeah. You're obviously not so extreme that you will fall and die, right? But for certain people, they would actually fall and then they die. There's actually a very simple definition for diabetes. Remember I told you shock, cells not getting oxygen? Diabetes, cells not getting glucose. Very simple. Exactly. Cell not getting sugar. Okay? Even for somebody who's hyper, which means too much sugar in the blood, the reason why there's too much sugar in the blood is because the sugar is not traveling from the blood vessel to the cells. So the cells are starving of sugar. Not as urgent as shock, okay? But still, it's still fatal. Okay? Another way we recognize the diabetic, on the side, tilt the head up. Okay? And I know it's hard because he's shaking all over, but just try your best. On the side, tilt the head up. And the reason is because, again, when they're on the side, you tilt the head up, opens up the airway, and if they vomit, the vomit will come up. When a person is having a seizure, same thing as an unconscious person. They don't have the ability to do this. they cannot cough. If they vomit, they die immediately. So you need to let the vomit come out. And a person having a seizure, they will lose control of the bodily functions. They will defecate, they will urinate, and they will vomit. Be prepared for that. Okay? Now, when I was with Red Cross, I used to teach people, oh, you need to open up the airway by putting something in the person's mouth. So either you take a piece of paper, roll it up, and stick it in the person's mouth. Remember that? Yeah, remember that? Yeah. Or maybe even your own wallet, take it out. Yeah. The logic, the reason back then was because we don't want to bite their tongue. By putting something in their mouth, prevents them from biting their tongue, and plus it opens up the airway. But WSIB changed the standard, okay, due to like too many problems. Now, the way we deal with open up the airway, tilt the head up like this. As far as them biting their tongue, we just don't care anymore. If they're biting their tongue, they bite their tongue. We let the doctors fix it. Yeah. The reason is because too many people have problems. If you put your finger anywhere close to the person's mouth when they're having a seizure, they bite your finger off. Okay? Number one. Number two, even worse, some people can actually clamp onto your finger when they're having a seizure. They clamp onto it, and as soon as they clamp onto it, what's your natural reaction? You pull your hand away, you jerk, and because you don't realize they clamp onto it, you break their neck. Okay? Very, very bad. You're creating a really bad situation when it really isn't that bad. I mean, childs have seizures all the time. Well, they don't have seizures all the time. But if the child has seizures, they have it all the time. And they're totally fine after the seizures. Are you putting in your finger, doing this, break their neck, you're creating a really bad situation. In fact, of all the medical conditions, we tell you to help with their own medication. So if they're asthmatic, they cannot take, they're too weak to use the inhaler, we tell you to help with the inhaler. If they're too weak, they're having a heart attack, they're too weak to use nitroglycerin, we help you to spray the nitroglycerin under their tongue. Seizures do not help with their medication. Okay? There are inhibitors that they put between the cheek and the gum, which will help with their seizures. but do not help even if it's their own medication. And bottom line is because we don't want you to put your finger in the person's mouth. Okay, the last two medical conditions I cover is asthma and anaphylaxis. Okay, so for person having asthma attack, the video says use a spacer. Spacer is actually very important because it's hard to time it. If the medicine just sits here, it's not going to work. It must be here and here. So if you don't have a spacer, just roll a piece of paper, and this will be your spacer. Also be aware that some children, they carry this turbo-inhaler. So instead of the pump, this one you activate it by turning one way and turn the other way, you'll hear a click. Okay. You may want to shake it before, but as soon as you activate it, you hear this click. Don't shake it, don't drop it because it's a powder that will come up. Hand it to the child. That's it. Okay. You don't have to time anything. Second dose, again, turn it one way, turn the other way, listen for the click. Second dose. Okay. Now, I have a question for you guys. Do we ever give somebody else medication to another child? No. Okay. Number one, it's not clean. Number two, we're not doctors. We don't know if it's the right medication. Number three, there's actually school policy against that. If we don't share medication. Because some children, they like to share medication, try to get high on other people's inhaler. Okay? So that's why there's a school policy against that. With that said, there is one situation